one of the most important things in life is to make sure you make a difference. Your impact is a positive impact on at least somebody. I've had the great fortune to make an impact on a lot of people and a lot of dentists. And not just the dentists, but their patients, their families, the patients' families. If you look at it, it multiplies many, many, many fold, and I appreciate that. Well, I always wanted to be a physician through my early years and into high school and even into college at University of Florida. But at one point I took a class, an arts and crafts class, and I found out I was really, really good with my hands. And that's what really turned my decision to apply to dental school. I applied to medical school also, and I got accepted right away after my application to Medical College of Virginia, and that's what I did. So I graduated dental school in 1969, then I spent 2 years in the service at Fort Benning, 2 years at Boston University in my graduate program, and then I came back to Miami and opened my practice and was in practice from about 73 to 1982. It was 4 separate lectures that covered all day. It was an all-day program, and it took the 4 major parts or studies in occlusion. So the Pankey-Mann-Schuyler was represented by Dr. Pankey, and Dawson's program was represented by himself. The perioprosthetics program was Morty Amsterdam, and the nathologist, I believe, was P.K. Thomas. And to this day, it was my very best day of dental education, because it took 4 different approaches, and there was no arguments, there wasn't any theatrics, it was just pure, excellent lectures that kept everybody enthralled the whole full day. Well, it came right about the same time. I had visited his office, and I wanted to meet him, and I wanted to see if there was some kind of an opening for me. And he sort of chuckled because he had just, almost the day before, just hired somebody to fill a spot that was open. So I was a day late and a dollar short, so to speak. It was a very, very difficult time for me. I loved the practice of dentistry. I had been doing a little bit of teaching, so I knew I liked that also, but I didn't know at the time that I was going to end up loving teaching and every bit as much as private practice. But when I couldn't do the full-time practice, it was like the end of the world for me. And I owe everything to my wife, because she said, "You're not going to sit around and mope. Go do something. You either go to dental schools to teach or something." And that's, fortuitously, that's when Dr. Pankey Jr. suggested I come visit the Pankey Institute. So it was just a beautiful timing when I look back now, but I thought it was the end of the world. Well, in my practice, I worked with several different specialists in either orthodontics or periodontics or oral surgery, and he was one of the better orthodontists in South Miami, and I had done several cases with him. And we became also friends. I happened to buy my first boat from him, and we had gotten fairly close. And when I ended up coming down with psoriatic arthritis that limited my ability to do full-time practice, he knew that I was kind of suffering, because it had started in my hands, and that made it difficult to do the long appointments that I had been used to. And he suggested that I come see what was going on at the Pankey Institute, because he felt he knew that they were in, I wouldn't say trouble, but they were having a hard time keeping students and developing their students, and just things were at a low point. And they had just recently brought in Chris Sager as CEO, and that's about the time I came to visit. And the faculty I met there, the visiting faculty, all seemed to have a very similar philosophy of practice that I had developed myself. And we just fit together beautifully. Whenever I had gone to visit faculty like Guy Haddix, we both said to each other, boy, we could practice together without any problems, because we had such a similar philosophy that, of course, was emanating from Dr. Pankey's philosophy. Sure, it was a very interesting time here at the Pankey Institute, because once Chris Sager really believed that I was the one to take over a chairmanship of the education, and the board agreed, they really needed to vet me, and they sent me over to St. Pete to meet with Pete Dawson. And when I got there, he was in the middle of one of his courses. So he said, why don't you go up to my room and wait for me? And when he came in, there really wasn't any way for me to show him the work that I brought on slides. So we both ended up sitting on the bed, shining the projector on the wall, and I got through about 3 slides, and he says, you know, that's enough. I've already seen better work than I normally see. So he said, I'm going to tell them that you should be the chairman. The whole process took about 5 minutes, maybe at the most. And of course, then Pete and I we were friends before, but we've remained very good friends all this time. I think we have a mutual respect for each other. But that really did open the door as chairman, and that chairmanship really became, next to my family and my marriage and all of that, it became the most significant thing in my life. And for all those years, 20-some or 30-some years, I literally devoted my life to the Pankey Institute and to the education. Key challenges were basically keeping the faculty happy, stimulating the students, keeping them primarily in my mind. Everything I did was for the students, not ruling with an iron hand, but ruling with a firm conviction that what I was doing was best for the Pankey Institute. My most maybe important memory wasn't a fond memory, but the most important memory was that there was some discussion that after X number of years, the question was it appropriate that we stayed downtown? The DuPont Plaza, when we first started there, was a great place to have an educational center. But after a while, around that building went downhill. Sager and I and the board quickly decided it was time. And Chris had his eye on Key Biscayne all along, and I think it was a great decision to move to Key Biscayne. And very quickly, we and the people that came to take courses and the people that came to teach very quickly said, you know, every time I go over that bridge, it's like I'm coming home. So this place really became home for a lot of us. When I say that, I almost get choked up, because we came over here for so many, many years, and it was like our home. His voice was missing, and his way of talking about the philosophy was missing. I said, Dr. Pankey, why aren't you teaching here? He said, well, no one's ever asked me. So I said, well, regard this, that you've now been asked, and would you like to do it? He said, absolutely. And from that point on until he couldn't teach anymore, he was here. He at least once a week he would give an 2-hour lecture. People remembered it, and it made a big impact on our whole educational process. And to this day, I continue my skills in trying to present the philosophy. So I take the mystery out of it and try to make it understandable and make it a real learning process. Yeah, if Dr. Pankey himself was sitting here, he would suggest that it should be called a philosophy of the practice of dentistry. He felt that what he had learned over his lifetime, he did an amalgamation of different approaches and ended up, it was called the Pankey Philosophy. So each of us who have studied under him sort of develop our own approach to the Pankey Philosophy. Now, there's certain things that are common to all those who say, quote, Pankey Philosophy. It's putting the patient first, it's being thorough, it's getting to know the patient so that you have a bonded relationship with each patient, which sometimes takes time, sometimes happens quickly, but other times takes some time to develop. And we do a sort of a customized approach to each patient. How quickly we move, how slowly we move, depends on where the patient is coming from. And we always do a thorough examination. We always do a good case study. We almost always end up with more than one possible solution so that there is some input from the patient on how they want to go. We don't ever try to read the patient's pocketbook because there's no way to know that. So as we get to know the patient and as we develop a relationship, we can come up with something that's personalized and is agreeable from the patient's point and from the dentist's point of view. It brings a smile on my face because Diego and I just were going over a lot of pictures, and a lot of those pictures were taken during some of these enhancement programs, and they were so much fun. They were designed to have fun. They were designed to have faculty come down. They were almost always assigned to do something. So there was some work involved, but we made it enjoyable. We had great dinners, we had great parties. It was building a camaraderie of faculty that really ended up loving each other, and really, I think those programs helped create more of a devotion towards the Pankey Institute and eliminated any single person's ego to take over. Yasu Kawamura is a dentist that had created classes. In his mind, he was mimicking what he learned personally from his time with Dr. Pankey. So he started his own small institute, and he then felt that any of his students couldn't really be considered a graduate of his institute unless they came here. They would send classes of maybe 20, 25 Japanese dentists over. So we became very close. They were excellent students. They were very talented. But after a while, it became more difficult for them to send so many people over. And so they felt that if they could bring me over and I would spend a week, and out of that week, probably 3 or 4 times I'd meet with the various students and go over very similar things that we do here. And then at the end, there would be a big meeting. And several times during the first few days I was there, the dentist would ask me about the Pankey philosophy. And I said, well, you've heard it from Yasu, but they kept talking about, well, at some point we want to sit down and talk with you in just privately with a group of dentists. And they bring your wife with you. So Susie and I came in. It was a long table, and in marched about 10 or 15 dentists. Dentists who I had not met before. Dentists that were well known in Japan, but had not been part of the Pankey Institute. They said, we really only have 2 questions. And the 2 questions, it depends on how you answer them. Will we attend tomorrow's final lecture? So the first question is a technical question, and it was something about if you believe in gnathology, could you still be a student at the Pankey Institute? There are parts of gnathology that do form the basis of the Pankey technical philosophy. Only one more question. Do you have to be Christian to believe in the Pankey philosophy? Well, I didn't have to think about that too long because I had thought about that a lot over the years. And obviously, I'm Jewish, you don't have to be. But your own personal religious belief does not affect how you study here. It has to do with the spirituality, it has to do with honesty and integrity, it has to do with those kind of things. And they said that's all we needed to know. We all plan to attend tomorrow, and thank you so much. You've straightened so much out. One of my fondest moments was when I first brought Lee in to be a faculty member. She surpassed all of my expectations. She became an excellent teacher, an excellent dentist. I have 2 of her crowns in my mouth right now. And I feel she is the absolute right person to lead us into the future. She has a very open mind about the future of dentistry, and yet she's dedicated to all the quality principles and all the principles of occlusion and the things that make our institute somewhat unique amongst all other learning centers. Yes, well, I wear 2 pins. One is the Pankey pin, and it means so much to me and so much to many of our dentists. It really means that we've studied hard, we've worked hard, we've attended a very special institute, and we believe in the teachings of the institute. To me, that's what the pin really means, both philosophically and technically. The other pin is given out every so often from the the Academy of General Dentistry, the AGD. Doesn't do it every year, but every so often they pick a recipient who they think represents the highest in dental education. And I was fortunate enough to be given that several years ago, and I treasure it. It means that the success I had in my private practice continues and continued into my teaching career, where I was recognized as one of the top dental educators. So it means everything to me. None of this is more important than my family. My relationship with my wife, my beautiful, wonderful wife, my 3 children, my 5 granddaughters, they mean everything. And I hope I've transferred my approach to life to them. I know I did to my son because he practices exactly the way I practiced, except he does it better. My 2 daughters, one is an artist and one is a teacher herself, and she understands exactly what I feel when I teach. And if we make a difference to people, then we're successful.